I can kick off, or if you'd like to.
The only thing I wanted to say was Bernard Bell was a former board member here at our society, and he's no longer with us. And I knew him from the University of Arizona, where we both kind of got our start in cultural astronomy under Ray White. He was kind of our mentor. So just want to throw that out there.
It was quite a shock and a surprise that loss. That one came out of the blue, and you know, sometimes it happens that way, I guess. Right.
Well, I guess we'll kick it off. I apologize if I go into coughing fits during this. We're having COVID go around the house,
Oh no.
so we isolated to separate floors. So we'll see if that works. little touchy right now. So welcome back. I think we had two great papers this month. I hope everybody had a chance to go through them and read them. They follow on very nicely from where we've been the last couple months. I think it's a really good follow-up from last week, or last month in particular, where we we looked at some of the calendar the calendaring from Hopi, and we had a good discussion on the petroglyph markings, which actually come up in our first paper tonight. I'm probably going to just put another slide presentation together just to, if you want to enable sharing, Rick. Just to help us with it.
Okay, you're ready. Sorry.
Sorry. I want to go to slideshow. Let me try to get in there first. All right, now I'm in. Now that I'm in, can I share?
Yeah, you should be fine.
Oh yeah. All right, is that better? So
That's good.
Papers we were looking at this week were Mike Zilich's Ethnoastronomy of the Historic Pueblos, part 1 with the sun watching, and Wolf and Bell, Shell Canyon, Petroshine, and Winter Solstice Observational Shrine. Kind of a follow on to last month's Winter Solstice talk, and just going in a little bit deeper into what the ethnographic record has to say about sun watching and how it was performed in the historic Pueblos, and then maybe taking some of that and applying it back to earlier cultures and what can be ascertained from the historic ethnographic records. So this might look a little odd. This is a clip from Expedition magazine from University of Penn, just to give a context of the eastern and the western Pueblos that are discussed, just to provide a little bit of context of where they are. And then I took some of the stuff that he was talking about and combined it into a bigger view, so we can get an idea of how the sun watching was performed. And at this point, I'd just like to maybe open the discussion up, so I'm just running away with things, but but does anybody have thoughts on the first paper or key points maybe that we want to bring up and discuss?
Yeah, I have a I have a comment, Chris. I wish I'd had this paper when I was writing my book, because although I've done some of this research myself, I hadn't done quite as detailed a study as Mike did, and I could have made my book a lot richer had I had this book paper to work from, just because it's a very impressive bit of research in the literature. And at any rate, I congratulate Mike Zielik on this paper. Did so at the time because I was very impressed. Thought he did a nice job on it. And it is a wonderful paper to understand in general some of the different practices and how they might relate to archaeological sites that we find and study. So just wanted to make that point and to thank Mike once again publicly that I thought he did an excellent job on this paper.
Yeah, it is. It seems like it was an enormous amount of work that went into this, and a bit of a heavy lift just going through the record that's really 100 years old now to come up with such an seems to be an exhaustive summary of the record that's out there. It was also kind of cool, I thought, in my own opinion, that he chose to de-emphasize the Hopi and Zuni to provide a little bit of balance in light of the fact that much less is known from the eastern pueblos, and to kind of present a balanced work of everything. One of the other
Yes, by the time other archaeologists such as Florence Holly Ellis and so forth were actually working with the Pueblos, a lot of the information that was gathered, especially at Hopi and Zuni, was not available in the Eastern Pueblos, simply because, one, they were more part of the Christian religious, their religion was much more Christian based on the whole. And secondly, to put it bluntly, they'd been burned so much by outsiders that they were much more suspicious and cautious about what they shared. So they weren't sharing even in Fuchs's time quite as much as that they did at Hopi and Zuni.
And that's still kind of true today. Everyone's looking at COVID as, oh my God, how devastating to these pueblos. But what it did was bring things that we hid at night. Now they're brought out to the sun. They're no longer hiding it. See, we used to do things, a lot of things at night because we were afraid. And I remember being a little girl and we would have night dances and they would fill the sky with smoke, and still Los Alamos would send helicopters over with, what is it? Infrared cameras to shoot what we were doing down there. So, I mean, that fear, does it exist still amongst those scientists? So even though COVID may be a curse and we're shut down, a lot of things like this that were concealed and haven't been seen in 200 or 300 years, all of a sudden are coming out. Just to let you guys know.
Yeah, that's it.
Interesting, Mary. That's great. Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, thank you for that.
But this research, it fascinated me because of the time period that it was written. And I made, I've pretty much done a lot of ceremonies with a lot of these tribes, both Western and Eastern tribes that you speak of. And a lot of things are still the same, but there are transitions because of lack of retaining the information from the elders that passed.
Mhm.
Just, but whoever did this research, he did a great job. And I understand there was a woman involved as well. I think.
Yeah, there was, well, it was one of the sources he used was Stevenson, and then also Parsons' work
Yeah, Parsons.
as well, who compiled those two enormous volumes, which are sort of some sort of encyclopedia for Pueblos, and the references to the literature.
One of the things I found interesting in looking at this is the prevalence of horizon calendars versus other light and shadow interactions. And I think that's something we need to look at more, because architecture is what I play in mostly. But the horizon calendars, especially from the site we're might be studying here in fall, Escalante Pueblo, that one, when I was up there, you could tell that was probably the main way of doing it, was because of the irregular and the prominent features on the horizon. So that's one thing we're going to focus on there. And in the studies that I've looked at in the past, or the documentation projects I've worked on in the past, particularly the Beg House at Casa Grande, Ruins National Monument, there's a lot of alleged architectural alignments, but one of the things I found most compelling there was the horizon around it was completely irregular, so it could be used easily for horizon calendars. So yeah, to me, that looks, we have to look at those things when we look at the differences between what we're recording.
I agree with you, by the way. As Mike, the point Mike makes about a lot of the markers that the sun priests, to use a general term, would have known about, would have recognized immediately, like a particular rock or set of rocks and so forth in the soil. Any researcher could just walk over them and have no idea that they were markers for observations. So even what some researchers in the past have said, like Fuchs, for example, again, would have said as a structure that was used to mark the sun watching place, would not look very special to an observer who was not read into either the Pueblo or the specific knowledge of the sun priest.
And one of his biggest points was that the sun watching was anticipatory, so that enough time could be allotted to prepare for the ceremonies. So if you didn't know when to look, to prepare, the actual horizon spot that you might be looking for has nothing to do with the solstice, really. So it just makes it even harder. And in that respect, that he says that there are 3 known horizon calendars. That is almost even more remarkable that there's even 3.
Well, Ray is right about knowing markers, because my grandpa, when we were little, would show us markers. And I was in San Cristobal, and I had my aunt, and she's the oldest of 13 children in my mother's family. And I hiked her, I think it was 5 miles into a site. And her kids were like, "You walked my mother where?" And I said, "Hey, she's tough." Anyway, she saw a pile of rocks close to one of the Pueblo villages that we were in. And she stopped, and my mother stopped, and everybody else kept going, this group of tour group of people. And then she told me in Tewa, wait. She says, "Let them go, because this rock, it just looks like a rock to them. That's why they just walked over it. But it's special." So then she started to pray, got her cornmeal and prayed. And then I'll explain this to you when we get home. She didn't really want to share it with the others, but later on I shared it with Dr. Blimlin, because it's important to that site that they should not walk over it or push the rocks away.
Right.
But Ray, that was my observation with being with elders out at these sites.
There's nothing that can substitute for that, frankly, Mary. That's wonderful. Great story.
And David, I think
Yeah.
some of the markers that we say would also double as the shrines. And I think that kind of figures into Virginia's paper a little bit in terms of what the early shrines and markers may have looked like.
Very simple. Is what they
Yeah.
look like.
Yeah, they just look like rocks or and that's what I told some archaeologists from the Ukraine. To you, it's just a rock. That's why you toss it out of the feature when you're digging it. But don't do that. Look at them or ask people who live there, what do you think? They'll know what it is.
Really good point. Really good point. There's something else that in Zelig's paper that he remarks on, which I found fascinating when I first discovered it years ago, in Cushing's book, where he says something like, after being out with the sun priest, and he'll say like, nor can the priest avoid something to the effect of he better get it right because other people are watching. That was the intent of it, and I can't quote it precisely, but because he noted that in the houses in Zuni, occasionally, you would find a port, and across from it, a marker on the wall that allowed the people in the village who were not out watching the sun with a sun priest know that it was near the time for the solstice or other important solar days. So there, what I take from this paper in part is that although there's a big emphasis in this paper on actual direct observations of the sun at sunrise or sunset, but also that there's that the people in the village keep an eye on what's going on as well. And this was borne out for me when visiting Hopi years ago. I was talking with a man who from Hopi who at near his house, and he started talking about watching the sun, and that he could tell me where the different points along the horizon to the west would be important to recognize. So people didn't just leave it up to this so-called sun freeze for their to understand when the proper time for ceremonies took place.
Yeah, he almost implied that the sun watcher ran the risk of impeachment if he wasn't accurate enough.
I think that's true.
I sort of read into that maybe there was like a mistrust of science at some point.
No.
So perhaps if the sun wasn't doing exactly what you wanted, then you could just sort of like say it's this is.
You've been too influenced by current
I got a
events.
chuckle out of that too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I guess while I have the microphone, I don't know the area that much, and others know the Pueblo cultures better than I. But the way Zillick just sort of framed this thing, the structure of the article, the way he introduced the cultures by their geography, by their language group, how he organized sort of the charts. So here's the things that are important, kind of went through each one sequentially. I just think that was it's so easy to read and so easy to sort of like understand and look at the differences and sort of like this kind of, I just think it was the structure of the article is just brilliant, I think. And I don't know if everybody else agrees, but
No, I'd agree with that.
it just I thought that was really super. I feel
Thumbs
like
up.
I know more. Yeah, and that makes sense. That makes it more important coming from you, Mary. But I feel like I know sort of the geography of the area and the relationships better than I have until I read this. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, indeed. I think it's a remarkable collection of information. Organized very accessibly.
And excellently well cited. Of course, we're not running to those papers to double check, but you sort of like I feel like, okay, he did, this is a guy that did a lot of homework and sort of spent some time figuring out how to fill out these charts. And so it's kind of nice.
Yeah. I was originally introduced to it by a paragraph in Andy Monroe's dissertation, where he says pretty much that the only modern collection of ethnography is Ray's book, these papers by Zillick and some of the stuff we already looked at, by McCluskey. And then, of course, what we were reading last month. But, as far as what I've found, I think, that is true, that this is some of the most important stuff we have, in print at least. I just grabbed a different representation of the calendar that he drew over the San Francisco mountains. I thought the other interesting thing, was, the difference between the western and the eastern pueblos was the horizon they actually looked at. Of course, that was probably based upon the features available. Then the one from Shingalpavi, and there was one other that he said was available that was not in the paper.
Mhm.
And then I thought the papers paired nicely because what we're looking at last month and this month is, focusing more on winter solstice, just because of the time of the year, and trying to coordinate that, and of course how it was the most important time of the year, and looking at how some of that historic Pueblo ethnographic record can be used or applied to earlier cultures, as long as it's done responsibly. And I think this is a good example. Our second paper talks about the site as being and correct me if I'm wrong, please, but being a late basket maker 2 or early basket maker 3 site with that's not located near any habitation region. One of the things Zelig points out is that the Sunwatcher stations were usually close to the Pueblo because of getting up early, I guess, and walking out to the station daily. But this seems to be separate from any habitation region, and
If I can step in here and just say that,
I wish you would, yes.
being that it's a basket maker site, the pit houses could be there. We just can't find them.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
That's all. I just wanted to throw that one out.
No, that's important. The thing that I find intriguing about your paper, Virginia, is the combination of the petroglyphs and then a sight line to the horizon, which I think is quite intriguing.
What's also interesting about the area isn't just that site. About maybe 100 yards away is a summer solstice viewing location that Greg has seen. And then about maybe a quarter mile away, there are several other viewing locations, more shrines for summer and winter solstice and equinox as well. This particular location is has a swarm, let's say, of shrines and solstice locations. Some are horizon, some are not. But it's really fascinating that there are so many in such close proximity to each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that's surprising me.
Well, the area there, as I recall, is has a number of features in it that may not have anything to do with observations, but which show people were using the landscape. So it doesn't surprise me that there would be a number of different ones. If you, for example, if you think about Hovenweep, there are several different buildings in that case that have features in them that make it possible to observe sunrise or sunset. In that case, both sunrise and sunset. So I wouldn't be surprised if there'd be a number of different viewing points and uses of the landscape to set calendars. And after
But
all,
what's so,
yeah. Well, go ahead.
what I was gonna say is that what's so perplexing is that it's from a time period when there should not be very many people inhabiting this area. And to have so many of these locations, unfortunately, is driving me crazy. I can't figure out what's going on with
Yeah.
so many of these sites in a time period that it should have been essentially almost uninhabited in the canyon,
Well, yeah,
according
one
to
of
all
the
the
things,
literature.
one of the things we've been learning lately is this area in the Central Mesa Verde region, the area between, more traditional Mesa Verde and Southeast Utah, more traditional, is this great land in between that's Cross Canyon, Montezuma Creek, and all that area. And that whole area is gathering a lot more attention as a possible place where the cultures blossomed out of and spread across the landscape. So
And that's a good idea. I like that one.
yeah, and I remember last summer at the Pecos conference, the Friends of the Cedar Mesa, the archaeologists for the organization, and over there, they're going to be starting to study a lot more in there. So I would suggest, Virginia, that you get in touch with them.
They've actually found me, Kenny
Okay.
Sanchez.
Good.
Good.
When you're,
Anyway,
when you're-
Kenny was in shock with so many so many circles out there. That was, he only knew of the big circle up there. And when I said, oh no, there's so many more out in the same region, he was blown away. We just haven't been able to get out there so I can show him. Compliments to COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
Greg and Ray know this, but I live in California, so I don't get out there enough. So it takes more organization.
when you're looking at these glyph sites, I've found several horizon markers, and they've got negative flakes, like, because I'm a flint knapper. So you notice that the rock or the glyph walls are on purposely chipped, so that if you're paying attention, you'll see this singular line across, and then it'll have a mountain. And if you're not paying attention, you'll just think it's a natural fall from the rock faces, but it's not. It's actually a horizon map. And I found them in San Coe when I was down in Pinto Canyon. I found 3, and they pointed to a specific mountain range, and there was a hunting guide with me there. And I asked him, where is this place? And he looked at me like I was nuts. And I said, it's right here. And I used my finger to go across the map. And he says, I know where that's at. It's right there. See, look. And there it was. And it was pointing toward the west, the horizon to the west. And the next one I found up above was pointing to the horizon to the east. So sunrise and a solstice markers. But if you're not paying attention to these little like on a ledge, like say you have a ledge of a pictoglyph and inside is a mural, and oh yeah, look at that pretty garden. But if you're not paying attention to the edges of these overhangs or these edges of these glyph sites, you're missing the horizon markers, especially in sites that you already claim as solstice and winter solstice, summer and winter solstice markers. They're in Bandelier, they're in Pouillet Cliffs, and I would not have known, but like I said, I had a grandpa who took the time to herd all of us up there and say, look what you're looking at. So, that's how I learned about horizon lines. And when I see that map that you pulled up earlier with that beautiful horizon line, that's what I see in those rock Yeah, that one. And you can see scallops or negative scars from where they actually flaked, and it's perfect.
Interesting. Wow.
But that's, I just wanted you guys to know that. I don't mean to
That's
butt in.
no, that's awesome.
Yeah, I like
It
that.
just, it just shows you that dramatically that there's no substitute for actually being there with somebody who knows.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the one thing that I wanted to talk about that I liked a lot in your paper is the methodology, because it seems almost watertight. I mean, everything is there. Ethnographic literature review, interviews with the descendants of, or possible descendants of the area, a field survey, and then what you guys did with the AUP program, and I thought that was really interesting. And then, of course, not just relying on that, but coming back for the photographic confirmation. And then I guess, Chris, you were.
It took 2 tries.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, I was just saying, it took 2 different years for us to finally get the photography.
I'm sure.
Clouds and, got in the way. So we had to come back another year. And it was harder to validate it, is all I'm saying.
I'm sure, but that's that's always great when you can validate modeling with photography of the actual phenomena, and be able to present them both in the same paper. I think is really, like I said, pretty airtight. Would you care to talk a little bit about the APU programming?
I wish I could. That was Bernard's part of the paper,
Okay.
Yeah.
and that was his thing. So I never got a chance to really ever see it.
Oh, okay. Does
Yeah, because
anybody
he
know,
lived in Tucson.
does anybody else know if that program was ever made available, or was that something homegrown?
I don't know. No, I don't think it was homegrown. It was something that he used from his other prior job. Ray can probably help with that one.
You're
You're
muted, Ray.
muted, Ray.
Right. I said, I wish I could. The the difficulty is that was something that I was going to sit down with Bernard about, because I wanted to understand what his methodology was. I knew it conceptually from what he told me, but not in detail. And anyway, it was a great loss
Yes, indeed.
to have him taken so young. I can say that because I'm a lot older than he was.
Well, he was young.
I gather from the paper that was something that he worked with Dearborn.
Yeah. Yes.
So maybe it's his. I don't know.
Dave might have it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I never heard of that before, but I find it fascinating. And,
Could you explain a little bit about what it is for those of us that don't quite know, even
Me?
the little bit you do know about what that might
No,
have been?
that's good, Ray.
Well, I can tell you what I know, which is about a thimbleful. But basically, it was a way of using photographs of the horizon and the sky above it that you wanted to explore. And then he had a this APU program made it possible for you to calibrate the direction you were looking at a given time with the positions of the stars above the horizon. And so you could actually form a little map of the horizon, the azimuths of the horizon, and then be able to calculate where the specific items like the edge of the sun and so forth as it rose or set.
My understanding from the paper is that your initial photograph had to have some recognizable stars in it that the computer would then use to make
That's correct. Yes.
using least squares analysis to calibrate the picture to I assume some kind of planetarium software that the photo, because you would have to input your azimuth and your altitude measurements of the stars, I'm assuming. I guess would need that.
And also your latitude and longitude and so forth.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Your horizon measurements as well.
Yeah, it helps avoid carrying a heavy transit and tripod out to the site.
But I thought it was very thorough. And then I guess, Chris, you assisted in the photogrammetry.
It's not using the stars.
Unfortunately, same thing with Ray. I had just started to work with him on photogrammetry of a few of his sites when he passed away. So I didn't participate in this work, but we had, I started building some models for him. So it was really at the beginning of developing this, I think.
So Virginia, where did the photogrammetric model come from? Is that something you did?
The one that you're showing right now? No, he did that.
No.
Oh, it says I did it. Okay. Well.
Yeah, it says you did it, Chris.
Sorry, but it does say I did it. I didn't realize I put that in there. No, I had built some models for him, and I was in the process of showing him how to do it, because it's like we keep coming back to. I hadn't been to the sites. I just had the data from Bernard, and you really just nothing substitutes for being on the ground. So I think I'm trying to remember back how it went, but I build models and I didn't know what was correct or incorrect. And so sometimes when you build these models, there's errors, and if you haven't been on the site, you don't know when to discard something or to do it. So the stuff I was doing for him is very similar to what we did in the workshop, and hopefully what we're going to be putting on in this fall, using PhotoScan software, the Metashape from Agisoft.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Where can we find other than on the Journal Club webpage, where can we find this article? And then there's some other citations says citations in this publication. Where can I find the whole book thing?
That would be Greg. He is one of the editors of the book. So on my screen, he's 2 up from you.
Yeah.
He's the one.
This paper was edited and published in from our 2016, I think, volume from Crow Canyon, from the conference we did at Crow Canyon, and it's available on our bookstore, or as soon as we see you next, I can get you a copy. Were you interested in just this paper or the whole book?
Yeah, I'm interested in the whole book.
Okay.
Seems like there's some other interesting citations in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before Borders. Yeah, that's the one this one is in. And we
That
got
can,
lots of them.
yeah, you can get that one right off the webpage.
Yeah, this particular paper, yes, but the whole book, yeah.
No, I meant the book. You can get right off the webpage, right? Well, you can
Oh,
order.
yeah,
it.
no, that's right. You can, if you go to the SCAS, the store, our bookstore on our website, this one you can download as a PDF file, the entire book. It's an instant thing. It costs like $9, $10. It's an instant download.
Volume 1. Is that it? Before
Pardon?
Borders, Volume 1?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, cool. I found it.
Great.
Normally I'd put that up on the screen. I don't really know how to do it, so. In the comment section, you know.
And before you asked me, Chris, I was poking around trying to find that APU software. I don't see any, I can't find it online anywhere, so.
Chris, I was doing the same thing, and it just doesn't seem to exist. I wonder if it was like an early, kind of almost like an early Photoshop, just something that was a utility for shaping and that kind of stuff. And not necessarily for this, but applied to this.
That's my understanding of it, that it was
Okay.
not something that was out there and as a commercial product or even a amateur product, or not amateur, but non-commercial product that would be available.
Yeah, I
And
think
it
what he
also,
did
if I
was-
recall correctly, it uses a software program that was pretty expensive. So it would be worth, I believe it would be worth asking Dave Dearborn about it.
I haven't come across it before, mention of it before.
Well, as we start prepping, we are, for everybody's information, we are thinking towards a new technical workshop in the fall. And this is the kind of thing. So, kind of doing a couple hours of just hands-on with types of software and how to define a horizon, how to verify horizon azimuth accurately in a photograph and that kind of thing. So I think that should be, it's kind of basic, but it seems like a lot of people do it different ways. So we should probably come back to that, revisit, I guess.
That'd be a big help.
Yeah, I think so.
When it goes to what we were always talking about, having standards and standard software, standard techniques, and then and also software that's available to everybody. Because the problem is somebody develops a technique like this and then it just sort of disappears. Even if it's documented, the software doesn't exist anymore. So we kind of have to reinvent the wheel with a new software package.
I've been looking at Sherry Towers. She did that article about the Sun Temple at Mesa Verde. And she has like open source R code, and then she uses all open source programs to kind of do this stuff. And I'm like really unfamiliar with pretty much everything. And so I've been kind of like reading through her methodology. She has like 8 blog posts and then plus everything that's explained in her papers. So if anyone would be interested in like working through that technical method with me, that's something I'm doing.
That would be super. We actually talked at one of our earlier conversations about this, and it was actually a result of the Journal Club. We were talking about just sort of getting everybody on the same page of statistics. And so R was something I've never even heard of before, but it's, kind of just one of those, a statistical analysis, either process or software. And just like we were just talking about, the other thing is there's a new idea comes up and somebody comes up with a new, kind of format, and then we all have to relearn it. And so, but I think for most of us, the last time I actually had a statistic class was many decades ago, and I've probably forgotten most of what I learned. So I wouldn't mind somebody just kind of giving me an hour and a half of statistics for dummies to start with, and then kind of move forward to the, kind of through some of these.
I surely could use that.
I
But
know.
if that's something you're interested in, Al, Fabio Silva has been developing specific, well, he wouldn't call it archaeoastronomy, he would call it skyscape archaeology. But he has a platform or a product he's been working on called Skyscaper. It's Skyscape with a capital R at the end because it's in Latin. So you could Google that. I don't know if he's gone out of beta with it yet, but it's something he's been working on pretty seriously for a number of years. I'll drop the spelling.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, keep me in the loop. I'm a math person, so I'd love to learn more about this stuff.
And Al, do you have a link to that blog you were talking about?
Yeah, I'll find it and put it in the chat along with my email.
Perfect, thank you.
So here I grabbed the 4 major points, pretty much lifted right out of the summary. I would say maybe, would you like to talk about this a little bit, Virginia? Or?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
It wasn't really
I'm
a
sorry, say
question.
that again.
It wasn't really a question. I'm sorry. I have you up on I have a from your summary.
I'm here. I see it.
Yeah, I just
And,
thought
oh,
maybe if you'd like to talk to it a little bit instead of me.
Well, I think it all was fairly explanatory, but it is a defined space. And it's so simplistic. It's amazing. You could walk right past it and never see it. It was the petroglyphs that really gave us the clue to look closer. And then Bernard actually was the one that saw the mountain through that opening. And anyway, it makes for a very interesting location. And I'm sorry, my dogs are about to go crazy right now, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to turn down my volume for a minute. I have no control over that. Sorry.
That's right. So I have a this could be.
I'm sorry about that. Somebody
all right.
came to the door and I.
So I have a question, and this is pretty much directed to anybody who think they could answer it. It sounds like the description of the larger stone circle in the paper. I'm just, obviously I'm not from the area, and I'm wondering about the pervasiveness of large stone circles, because it sounds very, very much like the stone circle on top of Shaw Butte, right outside of Phoenix, that Todd Boston was working at. And of course, that was determined to be Hohokam, and this is Ancestral Pueblo and Basket Maker too. But is there any kind of far-reaching, or is this common? My questions revolve around geography, time depth, and things like that.
I've seen these circles in Texas and of course in Oklahoma. They're always on the top of landscape like mountain range. Like Oklahoma doesn't have big mountains, but they have the Wichita Mountains, and there's a place in there that has one of these circles. It is probably 12 feet in diameter with a large rock in the center in situ. Do these circles have any of that? Virginia, do you know? The other place I've seen them is, again, back to Paint Rock on the very top of the glyph site, and in Pinto Canyon out at an observation place where they are observing the summer solstice, and there are 2 large circles. You're speaking of one large ritual circle and then a lesser one to the west. So the big one on the east, and it is a stair step, and it goes up Um, and that's way south, but I'm wondering, like I said, were there, other than the circle, is there other stones in the interior or exterior?
Almost all of the stones have been taken out of the interior and used on the walls. I had a Hopi come and take a look at the inside, and he thought that some of the natural bedrock might have been entry points, but aside from that, most of the stones on the inside have been used on the walls.
Yeah, some of the rock sometimes on the interior is the natural way to come in. And that's why I asked about rocks in situ. You know, sometimes they'll build those around those big rocks that they can't remove, but they mean something. I mean, they're usually facing a doorway or entrance.
There aren't very many on the interior, so I think there's more meaning to some of the rocks that are on the walls itself, the way they were placed. Some are definite, almost viewing windows, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. But see, they might have used that circle to I don't know how to explain it, energize those rocks that they used for the
Okay.
walls. And you don't just choose any rock. It's hard for me to explain because, you know, to the outside world sometimes, but that's my feeling. And from
The
what I've,
rocks at this particular circle, many of them are quite large, not easily moved. So, and in fact, if I recall correctly, Crow Canyon is looked at that in some detail.
Yeah,
circle.
Mark Varian and Grant Coffey have gone up there several times with me, and they've been doing some photogrammetry up there.
oh,
And they're
that's awesome.
also looking at, I've forgotten the name of the technique, but to get a sense of what the date might be.
XRF?
Oh, yes, we tried
I think
the
it's-
optically stimulated luminescence.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the one, right?
And I know Scott Ortman, I think, was the one that was working on that, and in addition to other folks. And I know he did the big stone circle, the other paper, and I don't think it turned out.
Greg talking now. Andy, come on. We'll see.
Well, the last thing that I thought was interesting, and I lifted this right out of the paper, is Virginia's question really based on Zielig's paper, you know, so I thought it kind of tied the two that we read this month together nicely and asked the question, was this a sun watching station or was it a shrine in the sense of historic Pueblos?
Well, we had a lot of dialogue on that, and Bernard was convinced it was a shrine, and Mark Varian was convinced it was a sun watching station. And in the end, I just stayed in the middle. I don't know which one it is.
From
Could be both.
Yeah, well, right.
No reason it couldn't be both.
Which was fine with me.
Yeah, they can be used for both sun and solstice. But you know, I'm I'm summer clan, so we do everything at sunrise. And again, with your calendrical dates, like we the Christianized side of the village follow the solstice by the Catholic dates. The traditionals follow it by watching the solstice, when to plant, when to harvest, when dances should be done. If there are canceled for some reason, they still watch and say, we still have time, we still have time. And then when the final time comes, when we've run out of time, they'll inform the rest of us that we no longer have time because of deaths or other things that occur within the Pueblo. Things get canceled or put back because we wait 4 days before we can do anything after a passing. So 4 days, and then another one passes, you get 8 days. So you have this little window before you can perform different solstice or ceremonies. And the food is important. You guys spoke in that article about food. So even though the village is shut down for that death or in respect for that person leaving, the food is still prepared because that's very important to creator. And you share it just with your family in your house, not so much the whole village. But I appreciate everybody's knowledge. You guys are awesome. Thank you. Gunda.
Much appreciate your knowledge and input too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very wonderful. I'm going to have to bail out, but
Yeah, me too.
Me
this
too.
is been a lovely session. Thank you, Chris, for bringing it to us and your leadership with this.
Well, thanks everybody for coming.
Exactly, Chris.
Next month, we're going to go ahead with part 2 of his research and talk about moon watching, which will be just in time for February ceremonies.
Good.
And hopefully,
I'll tell you about breaking of the ice in February then. I'll give you
great.
that.
You better be there.
We look forward to that.
Hear it.
Did he say moonwalking? Just kidding.
Oh, moon watching.
Messing
I won't
with
be
Chris.
food walking.
All right, I gotta go. Take
Yep.
care, all of you. My blessings to you. Protection. Chris, get well. Drink my medicine.
I'm working on it. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks so much.
Good night.
Night.